For centuries, the wealthiest people in the ancient world stepped out of the bath with skin that absolutely glowed, clean, soft, and impeccably groomed. But they achieved that pristine look without a single drop of soap. There was no lather, there were no bubbles. Instead, the ancient world relied on something completely different. They covered themselves entirely in a thin, glistening film of golden olive oil, poured directly over the whole body. And then, strangely, came the second tool in this process, a curved piece of bronze called a strigil. You would press its dull edge right against your freshly oiled skin. You would drag the metal down your arm, along your leg, in long, firm strokes. And off came everything: the oil, the sweat, the dust of the day, the dead skin, gathering in a thick ribbon at the edge of the blade. Pouring grease on your skin and dragging metal across it might sound like a crude way to wash. But the more you look at how this process actually worked, the more you realize it was actually a highly effective and scientifically brilliant way to get the human body clean. So how exactly does a thick layer of grease do the work of soap? This diagram shows the core biological problem with getting clean. The grease and dirt that cling to your skin naturally bind to your body's own oils. If you try to wash that away with plain water, it stubbornly resists, bouncing right off the surface. But oil dissolves oil. If you coat yourself in a fresh layer of olive oil, the dirt lets go of you and binds to that new layer instead. It lifts the impurities entirely away from the pores, leaving them sitting on the surface, perfectly positioned for a strigil to sweep them away. The Romans built an empire-wide ritual out of this chemical trick, but they inherited the idea from the ancient Greeks. Long before Roman bathhouses existed, young Greek men would coat themselves in olive oil before heading out to train. They would wrestle and run in the gymnasium, letting the oil mix with their sweat and the dust of the ground. When they finished, out came the blade. The motion was culturally celebrated, and we find it frozen in art. This famous statue shows a young athlete in the very act of running a strigil down his outstretched arm to clear away the grime. The Romans took this athletic, physical tradition and scaled it up. They engineered the simple act of scraping the skin into a massive daily destination for entire cities. Roman bathhouses were massive pieces of infrastructure. They were sprawling community centers that functioned like a modern gym, a country club, and a town square, all assembled under one towering roof. Getting clean followed a highly specific sequence. You would strip down in the changing rooms, hand your clothes to an attendant, and step first into the gentle heat of the tepidarium, the warm room, to let your body adjust. Then you moved into the hottest, steamiest chamber of all, the caldarium. The heat opened your pores. Your body sweated freely beneath the film of oil, lifting the grime to the surface. Here, the strigil came out to do its work. If you had money, you did not use plain cooking oil for this. The wealthiest bathers carried expensive olive oil infused with crushed rose petals, resins, and rare imports. They kept these rich perfumes in beautiful glass flasks on delicate metal chains. The elite also avoided the physical labor of bathing entirely. They brought enslaved attendants to do the oiling, the scraping, and the incredibly sensitive work of plucking their body hair to achieve absolute smoothness. We know exactly what this sounded like because the philosopher senator lived in an apartment directly above a public bath. He complained bitterly about the constant noise, especially the shrill cries of the professional armpit hair pluckers and the shrieks of their wealthy customers. Once the screaming was over and the scraping was done, you plunged into the cold room, the frigidarium. The shock of cool water tightened your pores. You walked out smelling of crushed herbs, completely smooth, the picture of civilized refinement. But underneath all that expensive perfume and soft skin hides a very uncomfortable question. Were the Romans actually getting clean at all? The answer lies in the water. Those massive communal pools were almost never drained, and fresh water was rarely cycled through them. Into that still water went the unwashed bodies of hundreds of people every single day. The pools became a dense, stagnant mixture of leftover oil, scraped off grime, human sweat, and dead skin. Worse still, the luxurious, steamy temperature of the hot rooms was the exact ideal environment for bacteria to multiply. People went to the baths to wash,
that they were effectively sharing their dirt with the entire city in a warm communal soup. And there is one final detail that captures the reality of this world perfectly. When a famous gladiator or celebrated athlete was scraped clean in the baths, the dirty mixture of sweat and oil was not thrown away, it was carefully collected. This thick slurry of human grime was bottled and sold at a massive premium. People bought it to rub on their own skin, believing the sweat of a champion held powerful healing properties. The Roman bath shows us that looking beautiful and actually being hygienic are two entirely different things. They landed on a brilliant chemical method for cleaning human skin, but they practiced it while soaking together in the accumulated residue of an empire.